wala pa dito. Kahit napakarami na natin ngayong gabi, marami pa din ang hindi natin kasama. Gusto po natin sa kanilang sabihin, welcome na welcome po kayo dito.
Yung aking mga katunggali, ayan, magsisigawan na naman at magmumurahan na naman. Palagay ko mas mahalaga na makapag-usap ako yung tunay na tao, hindi yung kandidato lamang.
We saw clips from the campaign rallies of Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vice President Leni Robredo over the weekend. Not only are the two garnering the biggest numbers in the surveys, they are also drawing the biggest crowds in campaign rallies.
While Marcos may be maintaining his wide lead in pre-election polls, there has been a groundswell of support for Robredo and in her rallies. On Sunday alone, her camp claims that more than 137,000 attended their People's Rally in Pasig City. Time for today's biggest headlines. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Drone shots have become a crucial part of how campaigns are done nowadays, if only to prove that there is indeed massive support for certain candidates.
Nowhere is that more evident than in Vice President Leni Robredo's campaign, who so far has been a far second in surveys. But the frontrunner, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., has already started to ride on that drone bandwagon himself. Gerard De La Peña with the big story.
The elections has always been a battle of numbers, but it takes on a different form this 2022. For Vice President Leni Robredo, who has been trailing frontrunner Ferdinand Marcos Jr. by a wide margin in surveys, the crowd attendance in her rallies from city to city has been sparking hope for supporters known as kakampings. Just this Sunday, her campaign tallied a record high as they reported that 137,000 were in attendance at their Pasig sortie.
Marami pa din ang hindi natin kasama. Gusto po natin sa kanilang sabihin, welcome na welcome po kayo dito. Sana makita nila, masaya dito. Punong-puno ng pag-asa dito. Wala po akong duda, nakakahatak ng pag-asa ang pag-asa.
And to show just how massive the support is on the ground, they're going up in the air. Drone shots have been the team's main weapon of choice. The unity team of Marcos Jr. and Sara Duterte are also now riding on this trend. During their weekend rally in Marikina, drones were used to show thousands in attendance during their rally at the Marikina City Amphitheater. Here, Marcos Jr. faced supporters in a town hall meeting instead of attending COMELEC's presidential debate.
Yung aking mga katunggali, ayan, magsisigawan na naman at magmumurahan na naman. Palagay ko mas mahalaga na makapag-usap ako yung tunay na tao, hindi yung kandidato lamang. Kaya ginawa namin itong town hall meeting para kung ano ang inyong...
The team did not release an official crowd count. The last time they did was during a sortie in Las Piñas, where senatorial candidate Mark Villar claimed that 500,000 attended their events, which the Las Piñas police later on denied. While Robredo and Marcos Jr. held thousands of supporters on the ground during their sorties, attendance in some of the events of the other presidentiables have been more lukewarm, mirroring survey numbers where they have a long way to go to catch up to the two frontrunners. For News 5, Gerard De La Peña, we are One News.
In terms of impact, how do political rally crowds compare with survey numbers? That big question and more with Professor George Tigno of the University of the Philippines Department of Political Science. Professor Tigno, welcome to The Big Story.
Thank you, Robbie.
Hey, Professor, everybody, now you just have to say drone shots, everybody knows what that is. This is new technology. It's not entirely new scenes, but does it bring anything new to the table?
Okay, well, to start off, both Robredo and Marcos camps have actually managed to draw bigger and bigger crowds. over the past few weeks. Pareho silang nagpapasikat. No? Both seem to showcase a high degree of grassroots support, despite the fact that one was held in a relatively upper class, business district of Manila, Metro Manila. Both seem to show large-scale grassroots support, with participants coming from all walks of life. Both also use celebrities to draw bigger and bigger crowds. However, there are certain differences between these campaign events, these two camps. These differences pertain more to less to quantity and more to quality. In the case of Robredo, the Robredo campaign rallies, they seem to offer dedicated and highly voluntary participants, with people who come not only with themselves, but also those bringing in their families and friends with them, but also their ideas. They bring with them self-made placards, posters, shirts, and even resources like free food. And they basically offer a more positive and festive vibe, about the promise of collective action. The second thing I notice is that if you look more closely at the Robredo rallies again, they're actually more granular, more grainy, more diverse, and inclusive, as exemplified in the, this and that for Lenny, slogans. It's more inclusive and pluralistic. I don't see that level of diversity in the Marcos rallies at this point, and basically their unity slogan appears to be consistent with this. Their participants appear to be more rehearsed, artificial, and lacking in diversity.
Certainly, of course. I mean, even acknowledging that, however, on the other side of this, of course, there are the survey numbers that really show a big lead for Bongbong Marcos. How important is that? Of course, I mean, the big rallies provides a rallying point. It provides a different narrative other than numbers. Is there a bandwagon effect at all in seeing crowds?
Okay, that question is actually premised on the assumption that these crowds lead to votes and therefore preferences in the surveys. But as we see in the case of Robredo again, we're seeing bigger and bigger crowds supporting her and her candidacy. But at the same time also, of course, we've seen big crowds also in the case of Marcos, But I think it's important for us to understand that these crowds, don't automatically translate to preferences right away. Because if you look at the sizes of these crowds, they betray some kind of, as I mentioned earlier, a sense of plurality, diversity. People who go there are probably decided and determined to vote for their candidate, or they may have been, brought there by their family and friends, or baka dahil may libreng t-shirt, may libreng pagkain, or they may be curious, or they may be attracted by the celebrities there. And so there are many reasons that we're not seeing at this point translated into the surveys, and as you mentioned earlier, it's now commonplace to have drone shots. The other thing also that is now becoming commonplace is the slogan, "Hindi kami bayaran." Both camps appear to show that they are getting voluntary, active support from their supporters, from their participants, to show that there is this groundswell. So I would rather wait for the surveys actually to come out, and then see from there.
Okay.
But right now, I'm not totally convinced that just because you have big rallies, you're going to have big numbers in the surveys right away.
Maraming salamat po, Professor. That was Political Science Professor George Tigno of the University of the Philippines. Meanwhile, despite skipping the COMELEC debate, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. sat down with Cheryl Cosim of One News, TV5, and Go Negocios Candidatos presidential series. The presidential frontrunner talked about economic plans and fake news. Cheryl Cosim tells us more.
Helping bolster economic recovery will be one of the main tasks that the next president will have to face. To do that, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. says he'll focus on MSMEs, particularly providing tax amnesty to those businesses affected by the health crisis.
Pagka gusto natin silang pahunin ulit, sabihin natin, wag muna tayo mangkolekta ng buwis hanggang medyo makaahon sila.
During One News Candidatos Forum, he also said that instead of lockdowns, he'll make a continuous push for vaccination in a program he calls Jabs to Jobs.
Talagang pursige tayo sa vaccine. At nakikita naman natin talagang magandang naging epekto mula nung nagsimula ang vaccine rollout.
But when it comes to economic recovery, it matters that the business and investment community trusts a country's leader. That's going to be a tall task for Marcos Jr. In a Bloomberg's latest markets poll, Philippine investors are lukewarm to the prospect of Marcos as president. In fact, Marcos Jr. was at the bottom of the poll alongside Senator Manny Pacquiao. While investors are more optimistic under the leadership of Vice President Leni Robredo, Marcos had this to say.
Well, we'll just have to prove them wrong if we get the opportunity. And we will.
While he's at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to investment sentiment, studies have shown that he benefits most from fake news, while Robredo has been the main target of disinformation. But Marcos says it's actually the other way around.
Kami, biktima kami dyan eh. At maraming fina-fact check ako na sinasabi, hindi totoo yung sinabi ko. Wala naman akong sinabing ganun. Pero fake news daw yung sinabi ko.
With the elections just less than 2 months to go, President Duterte has given hints on who to support, but has yet to outright give his endorsement. Marcos Jr. says even he is unsure whether he will get Duterte's backing.
Basta't kami ni Pangulong Duterte, kung ano yung napag-usapan namin, yun ang pinag-usapan namin. Alam mo naman si PRRD, ang galing niyang magbitaw ng paputok namin.
Cheryl Cosim, we are One News.
These are the other big stories tonight. He may not be in attendance, but Ferdinand Marcos Jr. became the subject of a discussion among presidential bets during the Comelec debate. And they're all united in saying that government should go after the Marcoses' unpaid estate taxes. Meanwhile, don't gas up just yet. Fuel prices are set to have a big-time rollback tomorrow. And global pop superstar Ariana Grande seems overwhelmed after seeing thousands of pink-clad Lenny supporters singing and dancing to her hit song. More of these big stories after the break.
You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Good news for motorists. After 11 straight weeks of increases, we finally get to experience a big-time rollback tomorrow.
The Department of Energy earlier projected a big-time rollback this week following a downward trend in oil prices in the global market. At 6 a.m. tomorrow, oil companies, Caltex, Clean Fuel, Flying V, Petrogas, Petron, Phoenix, Total, Unioil will all slash the price of diesel by as much as 11 pesos and 45 centavos. Gasoline will also have a price rollback of up to 5 pesos 45 centavos.
Caltex, Flying V, Petron, and Unioil will also cut kerosene rates by 8 pesos and 55 centavos. The Energy Department clarified, however, that they can't say yet if this will be the start of the downward trend of fuel prices.
Meanwhile, in Boracay, the tourism industry is feeling the pinch of soaring gas prices as gasoline nears 100 pesos per liter. This as the famed tourist destination slowly recovers. Shiloh Francisco with the story.
If fuel prices in Metro Manila are already too high for you, wait till you see gas prices in Boracay. Here, gasoline is already up to 97 pesos per liter, while diesel is now almost 90 pesos.
Ngayon parang tipid-tipid kami dahil sobrang mahal.
Tourist drivers in the island are feeling the brunt of rising oil prices.
Nasa include sa driver yung diesel po namin. So kaya kunti na lang yung natitirang kita namin dahil sobrang mahal yung diesel.
Operators of water sports activities in Boracay are more affected.
Speedboats are used for water sports activities here in the island of Boracay, like this UFO ride, but speedboats uses gasoline and the full tank usually runs out after 2 to 3 rides. So if you want to try and enjoy this, you have to have an additional budget, and I'm telling you, it's all worth it.
With the spate of oil price hikes, prices of water sports activities also increased by 100 to 300 pesos.
We need to kasi prior dito sa complete opening natin, nagbaba kami for the local market. So binabaan namin just to para makasurvive lang. Pero ngayon kasi tumaas pa yung fuel, so we have to adjust.
But tourists don't mind the increase.
Well worth the money.
Bakasyon naman yun talaga, kailangan mo yun eh. Tsaka ini-enjoy mo. Kaya sulit sa akin.
Super enjoy naman, tapos lalo na pagkasama mo yung family mo, yung friends mo. Yun lang. Ang pera, ubos na ba? Ano masasabi mo? Negative na.
Tourism workers now hope that big-time oil price rollbacks would continue so they can recover some of their income this summer season. Shiloh Francisco, VR 1 News.
For the big story in sports, the Alaska Aces' 35-season run in the PBA ended on Saturday night with a loss to the MLEX Road Warriors in the quarterfinals of the 2021 Governor's Cup. The Aces needed to beat the Road Warriors to stay alive in the conference, but couldn't get the job done as they absorbed a 96-80 defeat instead. With disbandment comes uncertainty for the pieces that will be left, but count on the nucleus of Alaska to be together when the next PBA season opens. Inquirer reported that the sale of the franchise is more or less signed and sealed, with Alaska and the new franchise agreeing on keeping the team and the staff together. The source, however, refused to identify the company, as the sale needs to be formally approved by the League of Governors. Time for another quick break. When we return, lone absentee candidate Ferdinand Marcos Jr. was slammed by other candidates during the COMELEC presidential debates. for failing to pay his family's estate tax. And the battle song that could be heard from across the world. Global superstar Ariana Grande shares videos of the Lenny Robredo's Pink rally on her Instagram story as supporters sing to her song. Details after the break.
You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Although presidential candidate Ferdinand Marcos Jr. skipped COMELEC's presidential debate this weekend, his name was not spared during the event.
This as some presidential candidates urged the Marcoses to pay their billions worth of estate tax liabilities. Marlene Alcaide with this report.
Despite his absence, presidential frontrunner Ferdinand Marcos Jr. was still a hot topic during the COMELEC presidential debate this weekend. The main point of discussion, collecting their family's estate tax liabilities. For Manila Mayor Isko Moreno, this will go a long way in providing financial assistance, especially during the pandemic.
Sisiguraduhin natin, sisingilin ko yun, kukunin ko yung 200 billion na yun, ibibigay ko sa magsasaka, ibibigay ko sa driver bilang ayuda ng taong bayang nangangailangan ng tulong ngayon.
Presidential bet Leody de Guzman seconded Moreno's sentiment.
Sang-ayon din ako pare. Kailangan natin kunin yung 203 billion na yun.
Echoing the call is Vice President Lenny Robredo saying that it will help those affected by the oil price hikes.
Ayaw natin isuspend yung excise tax kahit napakataas ng langis dahil wala tayong pera. Nasasayang tayo sa revenue, hindi papasok sa gobyerno. Ang ibibigay natin na ayuda ngayon sa napantawid pasada ay 200 pesos na napakakonti nun. At ito 230 billion pesos. Pag nasingil natin ito, hindi na natin kailangan tipirin yung ating mga kababayan.
Senator Ping Lacson meanwhile questioned the inability of the Bureau of Internal Revenue to run after the Marcoses.
Tama yun. Alam niyo yung pinasa naming mga tax packages, ang dami nun eh. Ang na-attain lamang, 101 billion pesos. Train 1, Train 2, ang dami, 101 billion. Merong 203 billion nga na sisingilin lamang na andyan na. Bakit ay singilin ng BIR?
BIR, for its part, said that a demand letter was sent to the Marcoses last December 2021. Recall that the Supreme Court, in a 1997 decision, affirmed that the Marcoses should pay estate tax liabilities, which back then amounted to 23 billion pesos. For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
I could not believe this was real. That's the reaction of global pop superstar Ariana Grande to a massive pink-clad crowd singing her hit song Break Free. Via Instagram story, Grande shared the aerial shot of Kakampangs singing during presidential bet Vice President Leni Robredo's rally in Pasig on Sunday. She also posted another clip of the crowd jumping along to the song. But while Ariana's post is not exactly an endorsement, another international celebrity was clear as day that he is supporting Robredo. On Instagram, Bretman Rock posted a photo of Robredo and captioned it with pink heart emojis. The star then shared a shot of the vice president during the Comelec debate and wrote, "My president is a woman." For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
Time and again, Vice Presidential candidate Walden Bello has called out the unit team for skipping the election debates.
The Comelec debate was no exception. Instead of calling out Marcos and Duterte, Bello sang them a song instead. During the event, Bello was asked whether it would be more effective to have just one agency to address corruption in government. And to answer this, Bello decided to sing a Frank Sinatra song, "Where Are You?"
He also penned a personalized lyrics into the melody to blast Marcos Jr.'s tax liabilities.
Where are you? Where did you go without me? I thought you cared about me. Where are you? Nasaan ka? Nasaan ang pera? Ibalik mo na ang pera. Ibalik mo na.
Alam mo ba yung kantang yon?
Hindi ko alam yun. Panahon ni Walden Bello, hindi ko na alam.
Hindi, nakakatuwa, no? Parang,
well, as the elections draw nearer, pautina yung oras, really, all the candidates really will have to make the most of whatever time they can get, whether sa debates, whether sa social media, each second really matters.
49 days to be exact left. And siguro yung kaninang eksena parang may halin tulad mo sa pag umabsent ka sa klase o kaya sa outing ng barkada, ikaw yung pinag-uusapan, di ba?
Pero tayo rin naman, yung mga butante, let's do our part. Hindi naman yung nagpapakumahog yung mga kandidato na sinusubukan tayong kausapin, tas tayo hindi tayo nakikinig, hindi tayo nagsisiyasat. So, let's do our part, let's listen, and let's try to learn as much as we can.
Well said. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Gretchen Ho, and we are One News. Have a good evening.